Geico presents Our Town, Season 2, a 30-minute podcast produced by Best Bark Communications, a small but fierce client-centered marketing company powered by decades of experience and well-established business networks. Geico, 15 minutes can save you 15% or more on car insurance. Now, here's your host, Andy Ockershausen.
This is Andy Ockershausen, and this is Our Town. And this is a special warming day for me because our guest is a part of banking history in our town. Even though he's Mr. Alexandria, Alexandria is still our town. I tell everybody, Hunt Burke, that the greater Washington area is our town. It's Vienna, Virginia. It's Upper Marlboro, Maryland. It's north, south, east, and west. It's about our town. And his bank, Burke and Herbert, when you mention the name, it's usually followed by, oh, that's my favorite bank. Or as they really helped me out when I was starting in my business. Or I remember that crazy bird Runyon. We always get a retort when we mention your bank. It's a legacy that began back in the 1800s, 1852 as I recall. The business of Burke and Herbert Hunt is a member of the fifth generation. His family operated Virginia's oldest bank and oldest continuously operating bank, and I'm sure the oldest continually under one family, and because the Herberts are out of it. But his father, Taylor, was a very dear friend of WMAL Radio, a Harden and Weaver favorite, and was one of the longest-running advertisers on WMAL. In 2016, Hunt Burke was named Alexandria Chamber of Commerce Business Leader of the Year. Welcome, E. Hunt Burke, Chairman and CEO of Burke and Herbert Bank.
Thank you, Andy.
That's a long-winded introduction.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you very much.
You know, your family is so important to us because of the relationship as a listener. It's to me important because I knew your town. I love the old town. I love our town, and I love Alexandria. But Burke and Herbert is such an institution. And it's so worldwide. You know, people, like we were talking before, people move back into our town as Alexandria military. They remember your bank immediately.
Somebody asked me recently why we hadn't sold in all these generations, and I said, we don't know what else to do. You
can't live on a bed. But it is amazing how your bank has withstood. I'm sure there have been, over the years, many, many attempts to buy.
Sure.
It would just be a natural thing because it's so well established that the big banks would want to get in, but they never really made any indentation on you.
No, we're still having fun, and as long as working at a bank is fun, then once the regulators ruin it, then we'll probably be ready to bail out.
Well, Hunt, and you also, because of your continuity, have established so much of a imprint in Old Town and Alexandria, and now, of course, you're all over Northern Virginia, but the banks have just disappeared in my lifetime and in your lifetime, too. You know, there's no more Riggs. There's no more D.C. National. It's a funny thing, but our town has become very small in the banking business.
It is funny because sometime in the 80s, there was a bank on every corner, and then they all went away. They got merged and couldn't compete with the community banks. I don't know what the impetus was, but now corporate headquarters in North Carolina and New York and all around have looked at Alexandria and said, wow, this is prime real estate. And so there's a bank back on every corner again. And
with another name, of course.
With another name. So,
well, in Winston-Salem, Atlanta, the headquarters are way out of our town,
right.
But not in Burke and Herbert. It's still at Fairfax and King Street. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I love that. That view of the monument and the names and the characters. Since 1852, you've survived a Civil War, a traumatic experience certainly for all the whole country, but particularly for Northern Virginia because you were caught in the middle between the Union and the Confederate with your bank.
Right, and we were just bankers. We tried to stay out of it for the most part.
Yeah, but the feds wouldn't let you stay out of it.
No.
When the Federals took over the city, they ran it. Now, your family established a vault of historic items, and that vault is still under your control.
It is. In the basement, we had something we called the silver vault. So when you were having a party, you'd come in and take out your silver and take it home and
entertain.
Right. So interestingly, a few years ago, a classmate of mine from high school, Robert E. Lee DeButts. I hope I'm allowed to say Robert E. Lee still on the radio.
You never know anymore.
That's right. At any rate, he called me and said that his grandmother, who was Robert E. Lee's granddaughter, had told him long ago that there were some trunks that Robert E. Lee's oldest daughter, Mary Custis Lee, had left in the attic of Burke and Herbert Bank, and could I tell him what happened to him so he could track him down? And I said, well, we don't have an attic, for one thing, but we looked down in the silver vault, and we had an inventory of all the belongings down there, and there was, at the very bottom of the inventory, it just said 2 trunks. And so didn't know what that was, so I went down and looked at them, and one had a big stamp on the side that said M. Lee. And so, yeah, I was pretty excited. So I called Rob and told him, and he lives in New York, and came down the following weekend. And the whole week I was, sugar plums dancing in my head, thinking about what might be in those trunks, swords or china.
Mystery trunk.
Yeah, exactly. So when we opened them on the following Saturday morning, it was just papers. And I thought, oh, how disappointing. Well, it turns out there were 6,000 documents from the Lee Custis family, dating all the way back to 1694 through 1900. So it wasn't just the Lee family, it was a slice of American history, and just fascinating stuff in there.
Did they publish it, or have they ever been published by the DeButt family? Or
Interestingly, there was a lady named Elizabeth Pryor Brown who was writing a book at the time, and it was about Robert E. Lee through his own letters. So he was this trove of letters that she hadn't seen, and she had seen a number of collections. So she was able to incorporate that in the book. And a lot of people didn't like it because it showed a very human side of Robert E. Lee. He was passionate, he was lusty, he was a tough leader, all the things that sort of...
He was a normal human being.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody wants to hear that. He was this Virginia gentleman, and,
right.
Painted by the historians. At any rate, so that was fascinating. And there were his stars. He cut off his uniform after Appomattox.
Right.
There was a letter from Stonewall Jackson that just makes me cry when I try to tell the story, so I'm not going to tell what was in the letter. And some memoirs that he'd written, and he never did write a autobiography, so this was, all really good stuff.
Well, the fact was that he was a soldier because he was a West Pointer, but that was his life, and he served America in the Mexican War, or the war that we had in the South, and he was in the United States Army when he resigned that commission to stay with his state. He stayed with Virginia.
Right.
And he was a statesman, and as we know, when he retired, he became a educator as president. It was just Washington College then, wasn't it?
Right.
And did you go to college in Northern Virginia?
I went for George Mason for a couple of years, originally to the University of Richmond.
Right. And so, and you grew up, of course, you're in Alexandria. You went to grammar school in the city. And how did you work at the bank when you were 13 years old? The child labor law.
Exactly. Well, my father said, you're not going to be hanging around the pool with a bunch of derelicts all summer, so, get in the car and come to work with me. And it's funny because if I'm walking down the 2 blocks of King Street to Landini's and back to the bank, I'll say hi to 10 people, and somebody was with me one day and said, gosh, do you know everybody in town? And I said, well, I've been working here since I was 13. If I didn't know somebody, that there'd be something wrong with that.
You were way ahead of Landini, because they probably only opened 40 years ago. You've been there longer than that, of course. But that was at one time, Burke and Herbert was in one place that I remember. I don't know where your branches were, but I knew the one in Old Town. Mm-hmm. You didn't have many branches for many years, correct?
Correct.
Your great-grandfather and the family said, we can do our business in this location, and we take care of our friends and so forth in Old Town.
Right.
That also is unique in today's world.
Yeah, we didn't open our first branch for the first 100 years, and my grandfather didn't believe in branches, so
right.
my father opened the first branch and ran it. He was the branch manager back in the 50s.
And then he brought you in to work with him at the main branch and so forth.
Yes, sir.
So Hunt, tell us about the family and got involved in so much of the city and the city government, because I remember the mayors and all the things that went on. Old Town was a great place to live, and I'm sure it's even greater now. But when Frank Mann was mayor, Alexandria became an all-American city. I'll never forget that. And that Burke and Herbert made that possible. I'm convinced of that.
Well, it's really great to walk around town and be able to see businesses that we helped get started and buildings that we helped get built and homes that we've helped generations of people purchase. There was an attorney who told me that I helped him with a mortgage on his house, and he did the title search all the way back to the first time that property was subdivided and sold, and he said Burke and Herbert Bank had the loan on it, every single owner in the history of the property, which was just,
that's
phenomenal.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, you took care of your customers.
Absolutely.
That's why you were so successful.
Still do.
Well, this is Andy Ockershausen. This is Old Town, and I'm talking to Hunt Burke in Alexandria.
Okay, Kevin, for the grand prize of $1 million, what color is the White House?
I know this.
5 seconds.
Oh, switching to Geico could save you a bunch of money on car insurance?
Okay. Judges? That's true, Kevin. They'll allow it. Congratulations. You're a winner.
Woo!
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
You're listening to Our Town.
This is Our Town. This is Andy Ockershausen. I'm more than chatting. I'm interviewing a fabulous man in Hunt Burke, the last remaining member today of the Burke family, the CEO. We're talking about our town and involvement of our community in Washington with the Burke and Herbert Bank through our Harden and Weaver. That your father was a great fan, and they used each other. They had a great relationship.
Well, it was fun because growing up, Harden and Weaver, WMAL was the radio station. I don't think we invented FM yet.
No, that's correct.
And no shock jocks, so that's what we listened to in the morning. And it was a very family-oriented, humorous. I don't know how many characters those guys played the parts of, but it was a sketch. Just get ready for school in the morning and having my bowl of cereal and listen to Harden and Weaver. So it was a delight to become associated with WMAL, and I know my dad and Harden and Weaver and yourself had a great time meeting for lunches, and it led to some really creative commercials that.
Well, the various things we did in Alexandria were all connected with something I considered very patriotic. It's either parades or George Washington's birthday celebration because of Old Town. And so being involved with Burke and Herbert Bank was being involved with what WMAL was. Our town, Old Town, whatever.
A lot of banks today have these, community outreach programs and whatnot, and we've always been, deeply
Absolutely.
involved in helping build the community.
Well, I remember the great story about I'm sure it was your grandfather, too. They had their desk right in the lobby of the bank. People would come through the door, knew them.
That's right.
They knew, and they could make a loan. And that was the atmosphere was so family-oriented. I don't know who told, maybe Marty Gannon, the erstwhile attorney, my erstwhile attorney. He moved out of town, an Old Town guy. But Marty Gannon told me that Taylor Burke would make a loan based on what he felt. That the paperwork might be one thing, but it's when he eyeballed a prospect, he had an opinion, and he usually was right.
Well, he was right, and it wasn't just opinion. Once he got to meet the person and know what they did and where the house was, there was a tremendous, that substituted for a credit application and an appraisal, and he could make it pretty much spur of the moment. And people today tell me they walked into his office, didn't fill out a single piece of paper, and off they went with a mortgage or a loan for a business or a car.
It was the bank was part of the fabric of society. I think Janice was relating a friend of ours, who's become our friend now, builder, John Nugent, started building down in the Del Rey area, as I remember, and he needed money. And he credits Taylor Burke with getting his life together and getting him started. And that story I hear it all the time from builders about what Burke and Herbert has done to get people started.
As do I. I don't think Mr. Burke and Mr. Herbert originally had any idea what Old Town would become. When I was a kid, it wasn't somewhere you would take a date at night. It was kind of scary down there. It was the guys all working on the wharves or whatever, and a lot of warehouses and pool halls and beer joints. But we were very fortunate to be right in the center, the epicenter of what became a marvelous town.
I was telling you, I remember vividly when Frank Mann was mayor, Alexandria became an all-American city. There was only 3 cities in the United States. Alexandria was one of them, and that was quite an honor. And everybody felt very proud of our town. and Old Town at that time.
Absolutely. And we were lucky to be a part of it.
Well, there was a time, like down along the river, there used to be some kind of a rendering plant or something, as I remember, a fertilizer plant that was financed by Burke and Herbert Bank. That had to be 50 years ago, 60 years ago, I guess.
One year, the circus was in town. Ringling Brothers was out at Bailey's Crossroads, and an elephant died. And they took it down to the rendering plant, and the town smelled horrible for weeks after that. But
well, it doesn't now. Everything along the river now is blossom. It's expensive condos and parks, and it's beautiful in Old Town Alexandria. Now, tell me about Herbert. There was a Burke and Herbert, but Herbert's name still remained, even though the Herberts were not connected. Is that correct?
That's correct. Mr. Herbert and Mr. Burke were in their 20s when they got together and decided to start a bank. And they shook hands, no paperwork. They became partners. And down in Alexandria, about a block from the river, they started, they'd sell real estate, or you could buy bonds for the C&O Canal. They exchanged foreign currency since it was a big seaport town, and they found a way to make a living. They even sold stock in the Bank of the Old Dominion, which was the big bank across the street, and they were very proud of themselves to sort of
to help the big bag
fly under the radar. Exactly. So the two of them became, fixtures in Old Town, and Colonel Herbert had about 5 daughters, and it wasn't fashionable back then for daughters to go into banking. So there's still Herbert descendants in town, but their names are.
But they stayed in our town, Old Town. Huh?
They sure did. And
where did the colonel come from? Was he a military man?
He marched off as an infantryman, as far as I know, in the when the Civil War broke out. He was in the Virginia 17th Infantry and rose up to the rank of colonel. And
he stayed there during it. And did he come back to the bank after the war?
He sure did.
And the bank had some sort of problem with the federal government, as I recall reading something in the notes about Burke and Herbert, that the feds were very oppressive of your bank at the time.
When the Union occupied Alexandria, they wanted everybody to sign an oath of allegiance, and apparently oral history has it that Mr. Burke refused to sign, and he was very proud that he was arrested and jailed in Washington, D.C. for a period of time. But he was also instrumental in things like talking the Union soldiers out of putting Alexandrians on trains and dropping them off somewhere in the South, which apparently was a way to scare people into signing the oath.
The petition, right?
Right.
But that was because he was aligned with the state. He was a Virginian, like Robert E. Lee was. His state was important to him at the time.
Right.
And that's why he resigned the commission. He didn't desert the Union Army. He resigned his commission in the Army.
He wasn't actually in. Mr. Burke wasn't actually in the Army.
He was not?
No.
Okay.
He was a banker. And really, we've always tried to stay out of politics regardless of our personal beliefs, because whichever side we side with, half our customers are going to close their accounts and leave. So
you're going to make somebody mad.
We try to keep a low profile.
Right. But the political process in Alexandria was important, though, and in the growth of the city, the liberal laws and so forth. And to watch the building has been, to me, it's like happening in Washington now, too. But down in Alexandria, it happened, I guess, 40, 50 years ago. It started to explode out west, out near St. Stephen's and Seminary Road and so forth, the building. And Burke and Herbert was a big part of that because they were lending money to builders.
Sure. Take a great deal of pride of seeing the things that we've helped build over the years, and the businesses that we've helped start.
Yeah, and your list of accomplishments, Hunt, are incredible. Your awards and like most things, part of it is your personal ability, but part of it is your association with the bank, such as the Alexandria Hospital Foundation Board, the new hospital, I hope. You're on the board of Five Guys. You were? Are you still on the board?
I was.
That is an American success story to me, of unbelievable, because I knew all those guys when they were just getting started. And Mark Mosley, who was a football player, was worked with them, and I used to bug him and say, Mark, you got a great product. Why don't you advertise? We need you. We want you. He said, we don't need advertising. We don't advertise. Right. I said, you can't. Tell me. He said, no. Word of mouth of Five Guys has made this company. He maybe had 10 stores then. Go way back. Now, what has he got now? 1,500.
Yeah, they're all over the world. Saudi
It's
Arabia,
incredible.
anywhere. Yeah.
And the product is still excellent, and they still don't advertise it. The Alexandria chapter of the American Red Cross, Alexandria Business Cares Foundation, Friends of Carlisle House. I remember Carlisle House was in Old Town, was it not?
Still is.
And it's on a side street, as I recall. It's not on King Street.
Right, it's on North Fairfax, and it's a gym in the Northern Virginia Regional Park Authority's
Carlisle
purview.
House, a wonderful, wonderful institution. Friends of Carlisle, Alexandria Neighborhood Kids at Risk. You do a lot of work with kids. As I say to people, did you know kids someday will be adults and have money? Be nice to the kids, and they'll be nice to you. Do you have family members that will continue the family? What is it about the Hunt Burke? Do you have a family that's going to continue?
I do. I have 4 daughters. And have
son-in-law is coming.
they all want to be realtors and go into different fields, but I keep telling them, we've got a building here with your name on it. All you got to do is step up. But I also have a couple of nephews that are very interested. So.
Well, the Herbert family was all girls, too, was it not?
It was.
And now?
Hopefully things are different now. We actually have girls that are in high positions in the bank, and I use the word girls facetiously.
We're not supposed to say girls anymore, women or females,
Right.
I still say, to me, there's girls' basketball. It's not ladies' basketball. It's girls' basketball and men's ball. So, but being in all these boards has been a valuable thing for the bank. Is that correct? I tell people all the time, the way to grow your business is get involved in the charity work. It's so helpful to business.
Well, people always think if you're a banker that you can be the finance guy on their board of directors, and I'm terrible at budgets and things like that. So
that's not your forte.
Don't tell anybody.
Well, I hate to continue with this line, but it's so true. Being involved, as I was all these years, with what we tried to do for the community, all of our talent, and that goes for the biggest to the lowest, we got them involved in some charitable aspect of their life away from the broadcast company, like Harden and Weaver with Children's Hospital, a Trumbull and Core where some way others may eat. Felix Grant was involved with the Music Association. The names you'll remember was so involved in the community more than just working. They became in the community, and it paid great dividends for our company.
Sure, and that's part of being a community organization, community bank. Not only our senior management, but also people throughout the ranks of the bank are involved in local charities, nonprofits, churches, etc. And it's a great way to get yourself out in the community.
It pays great dividends. I would say that all the time. Well, anyway, I'm going to take a break here now to get a deep breath. But Hunt Burke, it's been great having you here, and I appreciate it so much. And this is Andy Ockershausen in our town. I'll be right back.
Are you still promising yourself or your spouse to get your will updated and a good basic estate plan in place? Are you finally ready to make sure you don't leave a mess behind for your family to clean up? Give me just 2 hours and I'll show you how. I'm attorney Mike Collins, host of radio's Legally Speaking show. Come to my seminar and I'll teach you what you need to know about wills, trusts, taxes, probate, how to keep your money in your family. Register now at MikeCollins.com and I'll even waive the tuition. That's MikeCollins.com.
Hi, Tony Sybil here to tell you about Tony and Joe's and Nick's Riverside Grill at Washington Harbor in Georgetown. Spectacular new restaurants. We've spent a lot of time rebuilding. You'll love it. It's really fantastic. For any information, you can go online to TonyandJoes.com. It'll be a wonderful experience for the whole family. Call 202-944-4545 to make reservations. Everything is fabulous. You got to come down and have some wonderful food.
You're listening to Our Town with Andy Ockershausen. Brought to you by Best Bark Communications.
This is Our Town. This is Andy Ockershausen, and we're speaking to the gentleman banker, the man of the year to me, and the man of the century his family has been, is Hunt Burke. And we're talking about the future, Hunt, which you and I will see part of it, but we're not going to see it all. But what's happening in the banking world is stunning to me because I see it as a customer. And I know you see it as a CEO.
Sure. I guess the pace, as with everything in the world today, the pace of change is faster and faster every day, and we're doing our best to keep up. We want to keep that traditional touch with our customers, but also for the new generations.
You got to recognize the future.
Sure, we have to have online banking and mobile banking, and all the whistles and bells. Actually, not all the whistles and bells, but the basic services that people need in the ways they bank these days.
And you still have tellers. I used to be, don't ask me why, Hunt, but I was on a bank board, and I used to have arguments with the management of the bank about tellers, and the fact that the teller to me was the most important person in the bank. More important than the president or the CEO or anything is the person I dealt with through the cage. That's when they had cages.
Right.
Now, of course, they got plastic or whatever. And I said, our most important person is you pay them less money. They said, well, we got it because we have a huge turnover. I said, well, maybe you have the turnover because you don't pay them enough money. It was a continual thing. But tellers, I believe, were very important to banking.
They're vital, and it's very much like nurses or teachers. The people that are on the ground doing the actual work are the ones that get paid the least, and it's unfortunate, but that's.
Yeah, but that's what the public is relating to. You see the nurse,
right?
You might not know who owns the bank or who owns the hospital, but the nurse is your contact or your doctor. Same thing with the bank. That teller, it was sort of like important to everybody, I thought.
Right. Unfortunately, nobody wants to be a teller for life, so
no.
That's part of the reason for the turnover. But we've got some very good folks, and we have an exceptional record in terms of people not turning over. And I tell every new class of tellers that come in that we hire from within, that there's opportunities. I started as a teller, so all they've got to be is 40 years.
You learn the banking business there, right?
That's right.
At your father and grandfather's lap.
Right.
They teach you how to do it, do some work, right? You swept the floors and.
Really, anything that needed to be done. You're joking, but I actually.
No, I'm not joking. I know that's for a fact.
Did it too.
On rainy days when the lobby floor would get wet, I'd go in the janitor's closet and get a mop out and clean up the snow or rain or whatever.
Well, when those are the days, I remember we had Coke machines, and I used to change the Coke machines and put in bottles.
Right.
Remember the bottle Coke?
Absolutely.
Never see that much anymore. But being involved in the broadcast company and being involved with doing things with people showed me that there was a great gap in the broadcast business of taking care of people that would pay great dividends to the bank. To WMAL, and then being involved with your bank was very important to us because it was people, it was our town, it was Old Town, and I'm so glad for you, Hunt, and your family, and I hope they continue that tradition. Maybe you get a good son-in-law out of this, huh?
I hope so.
You got 4. You got good odds.
Sure.
Somebody to come with the bank. But having your tellers and growing them, I think, is a wonderful idea. Growing employees out of your own bank, out of your own business.
That's very rewarding, and they don't have to be acclimatized when they come on board because they sort of grow up in the bank.
Well, that was true of Five Guys too. They brought their own people up. It's a family business almost. The same people that started the business are still there.
One of the youngest of the boys, the 5 boys, started out when they had him working the soda machine, and he wasn't tall enough to even see the top of the cup, but he could see the level in the cup, through the paper cup, and so he'd stand there and fill people's sodas.
But I think that's the reason they were successful, because the guys that did the work were right there in the business when they started. And it's a great American success story, as is Burke and Herbert Bank, 1852. Well, what is your plan? You got another 50 years in the bank, of course?
People ask that a lot. I don't know what my plan is. I still enjoy going to work. I'm still capable, and people don't listen to me anymore, but it's a lot of fun.
But you still enjoy meeting your clients, and the people have been banking with you for years. That's probably a great pleasure.
And I think
for you and the family.
Part of the charm of the bank is having a Mr. Burke there and somebody they can call and yell. The customers can call and yell at, and I try to appease them and say I'm sorry for whatever we did. And they also 9 out of 10 people that are calling to tell me they were floored by the service of one employee or another. And I think that's unusual for
that really is unusual. Yeah. That's quite unusual. But knowing you're there knows that the customer knows that you're there and somebody's watching their assets. Right. That's what it's all about, right?
Right.
And Burke and Herbert have done that fairly well. I can't say enough. And growing up, part of my life in Alexandria, I loved the bank and and met all the people and part of it. But Hunt, thank you for being with us today.
Sure.
It's been delightful, and I hope your bank goes another 1852. How about another 200 years?
Sounds
we
good to
won't
me.
be around, but the bank might be.
Right.
Hunt Burke, thank you, and thanks to Alexandria, thanks to Old Town. This is Our Town with Hunt Burke and Andy Ockershausen.
You've been listening to Our Town, Season 2, presented by Geico, our hometown favorite, with your host, Andy Ockershausen. New Our Town episodes are released each Tuesday and Thursday. Drop us a line with your comments or suggestions. See us on Facebook or visit our website at ourtowndc.com. Our special thanks to Ken Hunter, our technical director, and WMAL Radio in Washington, D.C. for hosting our podcast. And thanks to Geico. 15 minutes can save you 15% or more on car insurance.